Welcome to allthingsfulfilled.com. I'm William Bell. This is part 4 of our study on this generation. Let's ask the question of when would all the things in Matthew chapter 24 be fulfilled? Before we do that, let's look at Matthew 23 and verse 36, where Jesus said, "Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation." Now, those who ascribe to a future return of Christ, as well as dispensationalists who believe they are rapture ready, will take Matthew 23 and verse 36 and refer it to the Jews who lived contemporary with Christ in the first century. Now, you may recall that Jesus was denouncing the Jews as murderers who were like their fathers who killed the prophets, and he was going to send to them wise men and scribes that they were going to crucify, including himself. He told them their house would be left to them desolate and spoke of the destruction of the temple. Now, as the disciples were admiring the beautiful stones of the temple, he responded, "There would not be one stone left upon another that would not be thrown down." And so they asked him privately, "When shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And so the Lord gave this response to their question. Number 1, he said there would be deceivers and false Christs, verse 5. Number 2, there would be wars and rumors of wars, verse 6. Number 3, there would be famines, earthquakes, and pestilences in divers places, according to verse 7. But the Lord said this was not the end, but merely the beginning of the labor pains, because he said that the gospel had to be preached to all the nations as a witness, and then the end would come, according to verse 14. Next, he quotes from Daniel chapter 9 concerning the abomination of desolation, verse 15. Then he quotes Daniel 12, verse 1, and speaks about the great tribulation, verse 21. Next, he quotes from Joel chapter 2, 28 through 32, about the last days and the darkening of the sun, moon, and stars, in verse 29. Then he quotes from Zechariah chapter 12, verses 10 through 12, about all the tribes of the land who mourn, in verse 30, part A. Once again, we find him quoting from Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, concerning the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds, according to verse 30, part B. And then finally, he quotes from Daniel 12 and verse 2 concerning the gathering of the elect at the sound of the trumpet, which would be the resurrection, verse 31. Here's what Jesus said about all these things. "Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." Now, why is it that the dispensationalists can see that verse 36 in Matthew 23 refers to the Jews living contemporary with Christ in the first century, but they do an about-face in Matthew 24? It's simply because they know that their doctrine cannot be supported by the words of Christ, and thus they try to reinterpret generation to mean race rather than people living all at the same time. Now let's look at the prophecy of Moses, who prophesied of that terminal generation. He said, "They have corrupted themselves. They are not his children because of their blemish, a perverse and crooked generation," according to Deuteronomy 32 and verse 5. Now Peter, on the day of Pentecost, quotes the passage to refer to the Jews who had murdered Christ. And he tells those who had accepted the Lord, with many other words, he testified and exhorted them, saying, "Be saved from this perverse generation." A direct quote from Deuteronomy 32:5. Paul also quotes it in Philippians 2:15, speaking to the Philippian church, telling them that they should become blameless and harmless, children of God, without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom they shined as lights in the world. Again, a direct quote from Deuteronomy 32 and verse 5. This is the end of part 4. We are going to present one last video, which is on part 5 of this study, and we look forward to presenting that to you and hope that you have found some value in the things that we have shared. I'm William Bell. Visit us at allthingsfulfilled.com.